Welcome to the Virginia Department of Education's Understanding the Regulations Governing the Use of Restraint and Seclusion in Elementary and Secondary Schools in Virginia. This series of modules is focused on establishing and maintaining compliance with Virginia's legal requirements for restraint and seclusion. It is directed toward all school personnel. Module 1, a general overview of restraint and seclusion, covers the Virginia regulations governing restraint and seclusion in Virginia's schools. Please note, there is a cumulative quiz at the end of this series of modules that will allow you to test your knowledge and earn a certificate. You are also invited to complete a feedback survey after each module. As noted by the U.S. Department of Education, school should be a safe and healthy environment in which America's children can learn, develop, and participate in instructional programs that promote high levels of academic achievement. Virginia has adopted these regulations to help ensure such an environment exists for Virginia's students. These regulations are applicable to all students and personnel in the public elementary and secondary schools of the Commonwealth of Virginia as defined in the Code of Virginia. Please note, it shall not be construed that school divisions are required to employ physical restraint or seclusion in their schools. School divisions electing to use physical restraint and seclusion shall comply with the requirements. In order to remain in compliance, school divisions that use physical restraint and/or seclusion must determine whether an action used in their schools constitutes restraint or seclusion as defined in the Code of Virginia. Restraint includes mechanical restraint, physical restraint, or pharmacological restraint. Please note that the use of mechanical or pharmacological restraint is prohibited in public elementary and secondary schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. A physical restraint is defined as a personal restriction that immobilizes or reduces the ability of a student to move freely. The term physical restraint does not include briefly holding a student to calm or comfort the student, holding a student's hand or arm to escort the student safely from one area to another, or the use of incidental, minor, or reasonable physical contact or other actions designed to maintain order and control. If the action does not meet the definition of restraint, or if the action falls under any of the does not include portions of the definitions in the Code of Virginia, then school personnel may act within their reasonable discretion. Next, we will address seclusion. Seclusion means the involuntary confinement of a student alone in a room or area from which the student is physically prevented from leaving. Here is a list of actions that do not represent a seclusion: timeout, in-school suspension, detention, student-requested breaks in a different location in the room or in a separate room, removal of a student for a short period of time from the room or a separate area of the room to provide the student with an opportunity to regain self-control so long as the student is in a setting from which the student is not physically prevented from leaving. Removal of a student for disruptive behavior from a classroom by a teacher, or confinement of a student alone in a room or area from which a student is physically prevented from leaving during the investigation and questioning of the student by school personnel about the student's knowledge of or participation in the events constituting a violation of the Code of Student Conduct. If a school division elects to use seclusion, there are structural and physical standards for rooms used for seclusion. The seclusion area must be free from any objects or physical features that may cause injury to the student, be of sufficient dimensions, and have sufficient lighting, heating, cooling, and ventilation to comport the dignity and safety of the student, and have windows that shall be constructed to minimize the breakage and otherwise prevent the student from harming him or herself. Additionally, school divisions are required to ensure that all space in the seclusion room shall be visible through the door either directly or by mirrors. They visually monitor the student continuously during seclusion. They include in their local policies and procedures provisions that address the appropriate use and duration of seclusion based on age and development of the student. Physical restraint or seclusion can only be used when other interventions would be ineffective and only to prevent a student from inflicting serious physical harm or injury to self or others, to quell a disturbance or remove a student from the scene of a disturbance in which student's behavior or damage to property threatens serious physical harm or injury to persons, defend self or others from serious physical harm or injury, obtain possession of controlled substances or paraphernalia that are upon the person of the student or within the student's control, or obtain possession of weapons or other dangerous objects that are upon the person of the student or within the student's control. Finally, physical restraint and seclusion shall be discontinued as soon as the imminent risk of serious physical harm or injury to self or others has dissipated. Unless a student's damage to property creates an imminent risk of serious physical harm or injury to the student or others, the damage to the property does not itself indicate an imminent risk of serious physical harm or injury to self or others, and shall not be the justification for the restraint or seclusion of a student. The next video will address required policies and procedures and training requirements that school divisions must adopt after a student is restrained or secluded, and to prevent restraint and seclusion. Thank you for watching. Please contact the Office of Dispute Resolution and Administrative Services at 804-225-2013 if you have questions about this material.